Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So first of all, Happy New Year everyone. 2024 was a pretty cool year. Hopefully 2025 is going to be even better for all of us. Now on today's Market Watch, we are going to cover a bunch of the price shifts that we saw take place over the holidays. The switch to the new year actually brought a ton of changes, as we will likely see some pretty big meta shifts moving forward. Now here in the TCG, Ryziel and Malice are still relatively new, but over in the OCG they are seeing other decks emerge, and of course there's also been some new support recently revealed for older archetypes as well. All of this has caused a ton of shifts everywhere, and we're going to cover some of the main ones in today's video. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Crystron Quarion Gandrax. So Supreme Darkness is the next upcoming TCG set, which should be coming out around the end of January, and it looks like it's going to be really interesting. I do think that over in the OCG, the set isn't too crazy. Hopefully it will be a bit more impactful here. Now one thing that Supreme Darkness did bring, however, is Crystron support, and the cards are actually quite good, allowing the deck to keep up with the rest of the format. I haven't seen too much hype for the deck. I think it's still a tier behind decks like Blue Eyes and Orchest, but Crystrons are still performing over there. I believe they did make it to a top 8 at a YCS over in China. Players here are starting to playtest with the new cards, and that's causing some early buyouts. Quarion Gandrax is a card that the top 8 list actually ran 2 of in the extra deck. This card requires multiple tuners, but on summon it can banish your opponent's monsters from their field and or graveyard up to the number of materials that you use to make it. And then if this card is destroyed, you get to special summon a banished monster as well. So yeah, crazy good card. This card can be used as a disruption if you are able to set up the ability to synchro on your opponent's turn, or it can get rid of multiple bodies to help push through boards as well. Now unfortunately, even though this card has seen some hype at times, multiple times in the past, but was never really meta relevant, this card has just one ultra rare printing from back in Raging Tempest, so its price has done nothing but climb over the past few weeks. I think that right around Christmas you could pick this card up for under $10. By New Year's this card reached $20. Now this card is almost completely disappeared off of TCG Player, sitting at $35 per copy with very few quantities available. Definitely a needed card if you want to play the new Crystron support. Just do be aware that this feels like something that would definitely be reprinted in something like an upcoming OTS tournament pack. So another monster that I want to look at quickly, we have Crystron Cirri. So as we just talked about, Crystrons are getting some more support in Supreme Darkness. Now although it is pretty obvious why Quarion Gandrax is so good, Cirri does feel a little bit more tame. During your opponent's main or battle phase, you can special summon a non-tuner from your graveyard with its effect negated, and then use Cirri and just that card to perform a synchro summon. Now unfortunately, you can't make Quarion Gandrax because you can only use these 2 monsters. Instead, it seems that people are reviving one of the level 5s and making FA Dawn Dragster instead. Dawn Dragster is a cool card because it's a spell or trap negate that also destroys the card, and considering that we don't really have Omni negates in the TCG anymore, like with Baron or Savage Dragon, having access to the negate through Dawn Dragster is pretty good value. Now unfortunately, this is another old card that has just 1 printing. Crystrons have never really been meta relevant unless you count the one Helki Fibrax, so a lot of Crystron monsters have just 1 printing and weren't even reprinted in the megatins from their year. That said, Cirri is currently around $20 to $25 per copy, which is pretty insane. Thankfully, Cirri does just seem to be a one of, which isn't horrible if you just want to play the deck and are trying to pick up the cards now. However, just like with Quarion Gandrax, we do have to be aware of the fact that the card is very likely to be reprinted in a set close to around the time that Supreme Darkness drops. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Moving on, let's talk about a couple of Orchest cards, starting with Gersu the Orchest Mech Knight. So the OCG just had a banlist drop right at the end of 2024, and early on it has definitely shaken up the meta. I think they saw several hits to yugioh, which is no longer the best deck over there. However, one really big and unexpected change was the banning of Abyss Dweller, which is often used as a way to counter graveyard-based strategies. This seems to have opened up the way for Orchest, which seems to be one of the best decks in the game in the OCG right now. Girsu is a really crazy card for the deck. It just came out a little bit too late and wasn't around when Orchest was at its peak. Girsu on summon sends an Orchest card from your deck to the graveyard and can also special summon a token to each player's side of the field. So not only does this get you access to something like Harp Horror right away, you can also use this card basically as a one-card Galatea as well with the 2 materials. Now, if you're playing against it, this is definitely the card you want to save your Effect Veiler or your Infinite Impermanence for. It really just is that strong. Fortunately for Orchest players, Girsu was reprinted in the Quarter Century Bonanza set, so whichever rarity of Girsu it is that you want to play, it should be pretty accessible. The one printing that has shot up in price, however, is of course the Quarter Century printing. Around Christmas time, you could pick up the QCR version of Girsu for around $8 to $10, which I think is pretty reasonable. However, with this hype, we've seen the QCR Girsu shoot up to around $17 to $18. We're still pretty early on into the Orchest hype in the OCG, so I do think it's definitely possible for the card to keep on going up in price. We do have to keep in mind though that we don't have a clear time for when we should expect the new Orchest cards to be imported to the TCG, as they weren't included in a core set. It's definitely possible that we don't see it until this year's Battles of Legends set, assuming that we get one, which likely wouldn't release here until around June, and that's still a solid 6 months away. So the other Orchest card I want to look at here quickly is actually Orchest Crescendo. Now this is the counter trap for the Orchest strategy, allowing you to negate a spell, trap, or monster effect while you control an Orchest Link monster. Of course, this does also have a graveyard effect, where you can banish it from the graveyard to take a Dark Machine either from your deck or banished pile and add it to your hand, but then you are locked into Dark Machine monsters for the rest of the turn. Now typically, this is something that you're able to set directly out of the deck with the effect of Galatea, so we generally have only seen players running a single copy of Crescendo, but I have seen a couple of early lists in the OCG that were actually choosing to run this card at 2. Now oddly enough, Crescendo only has one printing as a super rare from back in Dark Neostorm when the card first released. Because of this and how old the card is, it's actually becoming a pretty difficult card to find. I remember seeing this in bulk all the time before, but now it's just something that people don't really have lying around. As a result, this card has shot up over the course of the past month, being only $1 before, but now coming in at $3 to $4 per copy. Definitely something to be aware of. I know it's not the craziest price jump, but this is definitely something that we all just threw away into our holo bulk in the past, so if you do have the opportunity to do so, I would definitely dig these up and look to move them when the Orchest support is confirmed to be coming over. Next up, we're going to switch to the other tier 1 deck over in the OCG and talk about Neoblue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Now on previous market watches, we've talked about the Primite cards and how they've added the cards to the Blue Eyes structure deck to essentially form a top tier strategy. Here in the TCG, we should be getting the structure deck released in February, so we've seen a bunch of players buying the cards to get ready for the deck. In fact, it's probably going to be even more than your regular tier 1 deck since it is Blue Eyes, and even a lot of more casual players will want to pick up the cards. Neoblue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is a card that is run in the Blue Eyes extra deck at 1, and it's a dump target that you will probably want to have access to. While it's in the graveyard, during either player's turn, if your opponent activates a card or effect that targets one of your Blue Eyes monsters, you can banish this card from the graveyard to negate the activation and destroy the card. So yeah, general targeting protection means that you can save your monsters from things like Effect Veiler or yugioh Detonator, and even if it goes to your opponent's turn, they try to imperm your Spirit Dragon at the start of their turn, this is protection from that as well, so really useful. Now, Neoblue Eyes Ultimate Dragon has kind of a weird printing history. It was only ever printed in that movie pack, but the movie pack has several different versions, so it's sort of like they're separate products. The most expensive version and the highest rarity printing of the card is the Secret Rare, which came in those special edition looking boxes that had all secret rares. This card is just under the $20 mark for that version. Aside from that, the other two rarities are pretty cheap, with the Ultra coming in at $10 to $12 and the Gold Rare being the least nice looking version, still being the cheapest at around $5 a piece. At the moment, we don't have confirmation yet that the card will be in the structure deck itself. However, the card was printed in the OCG version of the deck, so it is definitely a possibility that it's in there. If you guys are wanting to play Blue Eyes in February, I do think it's pretty reasonable to hold on to a single copy of this card for yourself to use just in case. However, if you can, I would look to move your extra copies while they are hyped, as I'm sure that the card will tank in value if and when its inclusion in the structure deck is confirmed. The next card we have here is Elzette of the White Forest. So the White Forest archetype is an interesting one. They had several secret rare cards in the Infinite Forbidden, but they haven't really been too crazy of a deck recently. They sort of popped off early on and everyone seemed to think that they were going to be really good, but they've almost completely fallen off since the release of Crossover Breakers. However, the deck is getting a few new, really cool support cards in Supreme Darkness. I believe that for the most part they bridge the Sinful Spoils and White Forest themes, so hopefully it will be enough of a boost that it can do a better job of keeping up with the rest of the format. So early on, we saw both Elzette and Esteller as pretty cheap secret rares. They both shot up in price once players were realizing they were actually pretty good. I think Pack was playing White Forest Runic at a big event. Initially, Esteller was more expensive than Elzette, but over time, players I think started running more copies of Elzette, so her price went up past that of Esteller. Elzette is a really good card, allowing you to send a spell or trap from your hand or field to the graveyard, special summon this card, and then search for any White Forest monster. So yeah, very good starter for the deck. It's just that at the moment it doesn't seem like it's able to keep up with the other decks in the format, and even in the OCG where they have the new cards from Supreme Darkness, I think this is still like a B tier strategy, maybe tier 2. However, with the support coming, it seems that some people are trying to jump back on the White Forest train. Back when the card was hyped before, it reached a peak of around $40 to $45, but with its lack of play recently, the card has fallen to about $20 to $25. However, since around New Year's, we've seen a ton of copies of this card moving at around $35, and that's where the card currently sits at on TCG Player. Personally, I don't really know too much about the new stuff. I think that after the new support, it's probably going to end up being very similar to the OCG, where it's kind of like a tier 2 strategy. We should probably expect it somewhere around there. Either way, the White Forest cards shouldn't be reprinted until the 2025 tins, so it's just up to you guys and whether or not you want to play the deck. And finally, the last card we're talking about for today is Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, but specifically we're taking a look at the alternate art version. So we've discussed in the past the Sky Striker engine being used and seeing a ton of play in Malice, as they appreciate both the bodies provided by Hornet drones and the potential additional disruption of Widow Anchor. Of course, none of this is possible without 3 copies of Engage, which is able to search out either card, but also potentially allows you to draw another card for free as well. Naturally, a lot of players are after Engage, but at the same time, players want to try and be different. With the old art of Engage, it does have a ton of different accessible printings, including cheap ultra rare versions from the 2019 Mega Pack and the Magnificent Maven set. However, the version that stands out is the alternate art from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge, which in my opinion is the better artwork. It seems that a lot of players agree and are looking to pick up this specific version of Engage to run in their decks, though of course with just the one printing it is a bit harder to find. This card only has the one printing from Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge, and it was a relatively cheap secret rare coming in at around $3 to $4 each. Over the last few weeks, alternate art Engage has shot up to around the $10 mark. It was as high as $12 to $13. The price has cooled off a little bit over the last day or two. We do also have the quarter century printing of the card as well, which was at around $130. Now it's up even higher. I think it's around $200 lowest on TCG Player, though the most that a copy has sold for on there is around $175. This one is just going to be personal preference for you guys and what you prefer to play. If you don't mind how the card looks or you think that Engage is Engage, you're better off just buying one of the cheaper original artworks that's going to do the exact same thing. But if you really do prefer this artwork, picking up a set for around $25 to $30 isn't completely horrible either. Alright guys, that is all I have for you today. Definitely looking forward to seeing how it is that Supreme Darkness changes things up. I think that set should be dropping within the next couple of weeks, so make sure that you guys stay tuned for some coverage of that set as well. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.